Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here to talk about the 10 books that have been on my Goodreads TBR for the longest time. This video is directly inspired by the one that Kristen from Super Space Chick did on this exact topic, and I just loved hearing about the ones that she had on her TBR the longest, and once I started looking at mine, I was really surprised by some of the ones that were on there. Some of them are actually pretty shocking, or even embarrassing that I haven't read them yet, but I thought it'd be really fun to talk about them and kind of reevaluate my feelings about them. Maybe there's a couple that I need some extra motivation to read because I have not lost interest in them exactly, but I've kind of forgotten how excited I was about them initially. And in case you were wondering, all of the 10 that I'm going to talk about were apparently added to my Goodreads TBR on October 2nd, 2015. And the reason these are all from the same day is because I think this was when I was actually transferring all of my books from Shelfari to Goodreads. If you guys remember a few years ago when Shelfari shut down, yeah, so that's why these are all from the same day. I didn't necessarily decide to read them all on the same day. So since the sorting by date doesn't really work here, I'm just going to start with number 1 and work my way down. So the very first book on my Goodreads TBR is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This is a classic set during the French Revolution, and I do really want to read it. I think I've been putting this off for a few reasons. One of them is I have read 2 books by Charles Dickens and have not enjoyed either of them. But I do think I'm going to like this one more. I've actually seen the film version. We watched it in one of my history classes, and I thought it was wonderful. I do think this is going to be a very powerful book, and I do want to get to it someday. It's actually not as long as some of his books are, so I am still interested in reading it. I just know it's going to make me really sad, and I've kind of been putting it off. That's another reason. Next, I have another classic, and that is Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. This one I have kind of mixed feelings about. I do still want to read it, I think. But kind of the more things I hear about it, the more I'm like, this might end up frustrating me, because I've heard that there's a really wonderful female character who just really doesn't get her due, and I know that happens a lot in classics, and sometimes I can handle it, but from the sounds of things, I don't know, this might be more of a frustrating reading experience than others, but let me know if you guys have read this one, if it's a classic you really enjoyed or how you feel about it. That goes for any of these books really, is like, please give me some motivation. I don't actually know that much about the story, except I think it follows... I was gonna say I think it follows a knight, but I don't even know that, so I'm not even gonna try to summarize this one. The third one on my list is kind of a classic fantasy, and that is The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany. I, again, don't know that much about this one, except that it is a classic fantasy. I think it follows a human man who falls in love with an elf girl, who I think is the daughter of the King of the Elves, and I think it's about their romantic relationship and just like their two worlds. And I don't know, I've heard that this is a really beautiful story, that it's kind of bittersweet, and I think I've heard good things about the writing too. I tend to be very interested in books that feature elves and fairies, and I just feel like the premise of this one sounds very interesting. Definitely a lot of potential for drama and heartbreak, so that sounds like a great time, right? Number 4 on my list is one I definitely want to read, and that is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I actually just recently added several of his books to my TBR, because the more I hear about him, the more I think he's going to be a favorite author for me. But I haven't read any of his books. I don't even think I own any of his books. But I just have a good feeling about like the kinds of stories he tells and the way he writes, and like the themes of his work I think are going to really appeal to me. And The Last Unicorn was the first one I happened to add to my TBR from him. And I do think that that is his most well-known work. I don't really know that much about it, again, except that there's a unicorn who is apparently the last of her species, but maybe that's not actually true. Maybe. That sounds right. I don't know. Number 5 on the list is another one I own, and that is The Furies of Calderon. This is the first book in the Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher, and this is the series that apparently started as a bet, where the author was bet that he couldn't, like, there was like a combination of things that he wouldn't be able to write a story about, and he said, I can write a story about anything. And somebody told him Pokemon and the Roman Legion, and that's how this series happened. I think our main character's name is Tavi, I think? Yeah. And he lives in a world where people can call on these animal creatures that have like elemental powers, so that's kind of where the Pokemon aspect comes in, and I think the structure of the society is based off of the Roman Empire or the Roman legions. And I don't know, I feel like this series used to be much more popular on BookTube than it is. It was kind of a staple of fantasy. Let me know if you guys have read this and enjoyed this, because I don't tend to hear much about it now, and I'm kind of intimidated because I kind of feel like this is going to be one of those series where you have to read like 4 books before you start getting attached to the characters. I don't know why I have that feeling, but let me know if you've enjoyed this one. Number 6 on my list is one that is, I guess, a little bit embarrassing, and that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn series, and I do actually want to say that I should be reading this soon, because my friend Hannah from Lynn Hermione actually chose this as part of my BookTube Friends Choose My TBR, and she wanted me to read this one, so I do hope to do that. Can you hear the cats going nuts with the toys? because I can. So I do really want to read this one. I've really enjoyed Brandon Sanderson's other books that I have read so far, but I just have been really intimidated to pick up his most popular series, or one of his most popular series, but I do feel like I'm going to enjoy it. I tend to like his world and his writing and his characters. I have heard that the main female character, I've just heard very mixed things about how well she is characterized, so I'm a little wary about that, but overall I do think I'm going to like this, so definitely do still plan on getting to this one. Next, I have two books by Georgette Heyer, and the first one is The Grand Sophie. I think this is one of her most popular books, and I don't remember the synopsis of this one specifically. It might be the one about a woman who goes to live with like a count or a duke or something, and then he falls in love with her. I don't actually know if that's what this one is about. Maybe it's not. I do know a lot of people love this one, and Georgette Heyer has been an interesting author for me. I'll link a video where I talk more about her down below, but I have loved one of her books, really not liked a couple others, and then kind of medium enjoyed a couple of her other books. And I'm still looking out for another favorite from her, so maybe this one will be it, I don't know. And then the other Georgette Heyer is A Civil Contract, and this one I actually know more about. And this one I feel like could be another favorite Georgette Heyer, just because it is very different, I think, from a lot of her books, and my other favorite of hers was the one that people also say is very different from her books. So I'm wondering if maybe I kind of like her like one-offs more than like her typical stories. But this one is about a woman who agrees to a marriage with this man. She's very wealthy, but she's not very, I guess, high in society. And he is, but he doesn't have any money. And he is in love with another girl, another woman. And the woman he marries knows that. So it's very much a marriage of convenience, and it's not a love match. And kind of from what I've heard, I don't even know if it turns into a love match necessarily, or if it's about them just realizing that like they're going to work well together in like a friendship sense. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a very romantic one, but I'm very interested in like the characters of these two people, and I don't know, it just sounds so very different from a lot of other Georgette Heyer books, both that I have read and that I've heard people talk about. So that's one of the reasons I am still very interested in it. Number 9 on this list is the most embarrassing one of them all. And I have to explain why this one is on here. I have talked about this in a video before, but in case you haven't heard this story, it's The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. So, I have not finished the Lord of the Rings series. And in fairness to myself, I don't pretend that I have. Like, if people ask me if I have read the whole series, I say no and I explain. So here's the reason I haven't finished the series yet. I started reading the Lord of the Rings series in 5th grade, so I was like 10 years old. And I read Fellowship of the Ring, I read The Two Towers, and if you guys remember, the sequence of events is a little different in the movies versus the books. So in the books, The Two Towers ends with Frodo and that giant freaky spider. And then Return of the King starts, and you're still with the giant freaky spider. And I remembered, like, that was one of my least favorite parts of the book too. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're back with the spider. So I look ahead, and we stay with the spider for like, a long time. And I was reading this, you know, my 10-year-old self was like, I don't feel like reading about this spider again for like so soon after the last time. So I decided, like, I'm just gonna take a break. I'll read the 3rd book later, but I'm gonna read something else for now. And 14 years later, I still have not gone back to The Return of the King. And at this point, I definitely want to reread the series before continuing, but that is my embarrassing story about why I have not read the whole Lord of the Rings series yet. I know, shame on me. It's pretty bad, but I don't lie about it, so that counts for something, right? And finally, number 10 on my Goodreads TBR is Love, Lies, and Lizzie by Rosie Rushton. This is kind of a random one. This is a contemporary story that is, I believe, inspired by Pride and Prejudice. I think this author does a lot of kind of like Austen-inspired contemporaries, and if I recall correctly, the average ratings on this one are not stellar. They're kind of like mediocre or okay, but some people enjoy it. I don't remember what initially interested me in this particular retelling. I've even like almost removed it from my TBR at least once or twice, but I have decided to keep it on there because I do think I'd like to give it a chance. The only thing is I don't think my library has it, and I'm not sure I'm confident enough I'm gonna like it to buy it. So we'll see what happens with this one. This one might actually get removed from my TBR at some point, but if some of you guys love it, then let me know why. Like, let me know that it's great, and I might be encouraged to read it quicker. Okay, everybody, so those are the 10 books that have been on my Goodreads TBR the longest. As I've said throughout the video, please let me know if any of these books are ones that you have read and loved, because I could use the extra motivation, especially on a few of these. Let me know one of the books that has been on your Goodreads TBR the longest. You can actually sort it by the date added and then go to the beginning of your list. Thank you again, Kristen, for doing this video idea, because I had so much fun doing this. Even though I had to shame myself a little bit because some of them are kind of ridiculous that I haven't read at this point. But you know what? Maybe it'll motivate me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!